Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. A good topic? Let's do it. What's the scariest thing you've woken up to in the middle of the night? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I woke up to a bright orange window, thinking it was just something strange or that I was just dreaming. I went back to sleep. I woke up again sometime later in realization and ran to tell my mother. The neighbor's shed was on fire, and our fence and cherry tree were catching fire as well. I still remember standing in the middle of the night, looking at the fire and all the ash falling. The neighbors have a cool-looking rebuilt shed now. I got up to go to the bathroom and didn't turn my bedroom light on, so I didn't see that anything was amiss. When I got to the toilet, I suddenly realized that my hands were covered in blood up to my elbows. It wasn't dripping wet, but it wasn't dry either. I didn't have any cuts or seem to have any injuries of any kind. When I washed my hands, I checked everywhere, no injury. What the hell was happening? When I went back to my bedroom, I turned the light on, and half of my pillow was covered in blood as well, almost exactly down the middle. It was then that I realized I'd gotten a nosebleed and been wiping at it in my sleep, and it must have stopped just before I woke up, so I didn't have any clue left on my body as to where I'd bled from. I was living in a very dry area at the time, so nosebleeds were a common issue for me. That's the only time I've gotten one during my sleep though. An earthquake. But, you see, I'm no California dweller who would half expect to die in the night on any given evening thanks to unforgiving geological processes. No, I'm in England, and an earthquake was a novel experience for me. I thought a train was approaching my house and even awoke and braced for impact. I was utterly terrified afterwards, as I'd taken the ground's solidity and reliability for granted. Someone is standing in the bedroom doorway. He flipped on the light, then flipped it off. I woke my husband up and this guy walked out of the apartment. My husband ran out after him in his underwear. I went to the kitchen, got a knife, and ran after my husband. It turns out that the woman who lived there before us had broken up with her boyfriend and moved without telling him or getting back his key. I guess he came back to see her at 3 a.m. About a year ago, I was woken up at 4:30 a.m. by someone walking into my apartment. I live alone. Oddly, after the first split-second what the startle, I wasn't at all scared. I guess I just sensed there was no danger. It turned out to be the wasted hookup of the guy in the apartment downstairs from me. She had taken his keys to go out for a smoke, then forgotten what floor he lived on, and my cheap landlord had reused a matching set of front and back door locks on 2 separate apartments, so they had the same key. She was so disoriented and way more freaked out than I was. I ended up escorting her to the right apartment, and then she asked me for a hug. I have new locks now. Then there was the time I woke up to the sound and shockwaves of a bomb blast destroying a nearby abortion clinic, but that's a different story. A mortar alarm while sleeping in a tent in Afghanistan. You have about 30 seconds to get out of bed, get fully dressed, get all your gear and weapons, and get outside. Pretty shitty, especially when you have been up for over 24 hours straight and get an hour of sleep before being violently woken up. I woke up to the sound of a scampering raccoon-like creature inside my room, zooming about the night before Christmas. It then bounced on my bed, jumped off, and ran out, raccoon-sized. I followed it, and it was lying on the couch and barked at me adorably. Apparently, my parents got my sister a puppy, and it escaped during the night because it was lonely. They had it in an uncovered puppy kennel in the living room, and he climbed out. The interesting thing is that he ate like my older sister and instead clung to me. And he became my dog when she moved out and couldn't take him. Best friend to this day. The chick from the Grudge is standing at the foot of my bed. It took me about 3 seconds of intense fear before I could move and get to the light. I freaked my partner out because I half fell and weirdly screamed or moaned on my way to the light switch. The amount of relief I felt once I was able to see it was immeasurable. I had thrown my black pea coat over my vacuum. This happened around 3 a.m., and needless to say, I didn't go back to sleep. I had so much adrenaline that I cleaned my kitchen and prepped meals for the week, so that was nice, lol. Typically, things like the mundane can be explained, and that's a good example of scary things just being something real. A home invasion. As I'm lying sound asleep in my bed, I wake up to a bright light source shining on my face. I open my eyes and see 2 sets of legs and feet standing directly next to my bed. My first thought, upon waking, is that it's the police. I very quickly realize, though, that these are not cops, but burglars. Amazingly, I don't at all cower, but instead feel an intense surge of anger. I immediately jump up out of bed and begin to scream at the top of my lungs, "Get the f*** out of my apartment!" I continue to scream like this, like a chant. The burglars immediately do a turnabout and book it out of my apartment with me in chase. When I chase them out on my patio door, I stop, as I'm only wearing underwear. I find that all of my electronic components are unplugged and ready to be stolen. However, everything is in its place except for my CDs, which are gone. The police were very good about how they responded. They sent a CSI person to take prints of my apartment, and the detective responsible for my case even phoned me 2 days later to say that no matches to the prints were found. I wasn't surprised. I think they were just a couple of brazen teenagers. I told the cop, "How stupid can you be to shine a flashlight into someone's face and not expect them to wake up?" And he told me, "Well, criminals aren't exactly known for having high intelligence, which is one of the reasons they are criminals." Good point. Anyway, only after these 2 idiots were out of my apartment did it occur to me that they could have been armed and could have panicked and shot me. It was only at that point that I felt the anxiety of fear. One night when I was sleeping over at my friend's house, his younger sister, who was apparently a sleepwalker, came into his room in the middle of the night dead asleep and sat down cross-legged at the end of his bed. With a cup that they had next to the sink in the hallway bathroom that she had somehow grabbed on her way in there, she started putting it on and taking off the end of one of her bare feet like she was trying on shoes, all while half singing and half humming the Gem and the Holograms theme song. To someone like me, who had never witnessed such behavior before, it was a jarring and confusing sight to wake up to. It was more than my 13-year-old brain could process. But my friend just laughed it off and explained that she sometimes would sleepwalk and sing since she was younger, and it was something he had just gotten used to. Despite my friend's attitude about it all, I can say I wasn't overly eager to sleep over there again. I was sleeping in someone's house, very nice house, clean, etc. It was an upstairs room with an attic above me, and on the floor I was on, accessible by a small side door. The wall behind the headboard had a slanted ceiling. I was asleep and woke up suddenly. It was a dark room with a slight light coming in from the streetlight outside the window. I see this item moving on the slanted ceiling. I keep looking, thinking it's an eye speck or whatever, but then I swear I see it fall and land on my head. I flicked it, and it moved. It seemed like a roach, but I've never scooted out of a room so damn fast. I still think about this moment 20 years later. Probably the time I was sleeping at my deer and hog camp, and I woke up and I was staring at some eyes through the window. There was just enough light for me to see this light reflect off of the eyes. The smell. I knew the smell, and it was blood. The smell was like nothing I had smelled before or since. I've smelled burning flesh, rotting bodies, and meth labs, but nothing smelled like this. So of course I yelled, grabbed my rifle, and ran outside, and when I got there, nothing. no tracks, nothing but the dead silence and 4 dead and eaten dogs. We never heard them bark, and some of the dogs were mean as hell. I have a trained dog that is my general purpose badass. I trained him as a guard dog, retriever, and on hogs. This dog never shakes, but he was under my bed terrified to the point of pissing or shitting himself. My buddies lost 2 dogs each, and we still to this day don't know what killed them. We even had a necropsy performed, and the vet said whatever it was killed them instantly, and the dogs didn't suffer, and no evidence was found of any other animal that could possibly do this. I sold the camp the next day. The blood-curdling screams of a family friend as he realized he had just killed his girlfriend. I can hear him even now, repeatedly screaming, I killed her, over and over. I remember jolting awake and opening my bedroom door to find him standing there with huge gashes all over his stomach. He's bleeding everywhere, crying and begging for someone to tell him what to do. My mother stood there trying to calm him down, hold pressure on his wounds and stop the bleeding. But it was really bad. She shoved me back into my room and told me to wait for her, and not knowing what else to do, I did. He cried and screamed in front of my bedroom door for it felt like an hour, but I'm honestly not sure. My mom did eventually come in and explain to me that he had been drunk driving, hit black ice on a turn and flipped the car. They said his girlfriend died instantly, but he wasn't sure that night when he left the scene of the accident and headed to our house. I was told I could never tell anyone what happened that night, and for a long time I didn't, but he did turn himself in and is currently serving life. It is a horrific memory, but I will say that it has always prevented me from driving impaired, which I can appreciate. The police were shining a flashlight into my bedroom window and asking if I always slept with the window open. There was a screen though. Apparently my brother and sister heard some people on the side of the house and called the police. They didn't tell me until I woke up to the police shining their light through my open window. My bed was right next to the window. They never did find the people, and we have no idea what they were doing on our property. 12 years ago, my brother died, and for that whole first year, a lot of super weird shit happened to our family. The only conclusion I can come to, and I do really believe this, is that he was trying to contact us. A week after his funeral, my mom was home by herself and the phone rang. This was about 2 p.m. The caller ID said that it was my brother's house, so she figured it was my sister-in-law. Mom answered, and when she said hello, there was no sound on the other end and no one answered. She said hello again, and still no answer. Then the call was disconnected. She waited till about 6 p.m. when my sister came home from work, and she called her to ask if she'd come home from work and called her earlier. My sister said no. She asked if the kids had come home early. My sister-in-law asked my niece and nephew if they had come home to call Gran in the middle of the day, and neither of them had. They were in school the whole time till the end of the day. The phone was mounted to the kitchen wall, and the receiver was on the hook, so it's not like the dog knocked it over and accidentally stepped on the speed dial. We think it was my brother making contact to let my mom know he was around. My sister-in-law is an amazing cook, and she has many kitchen utensils and tools that are very specialized and that you only use for one thing. For example, a certain knife you'd only use for fish or some such thing. Over the course of that first year he was gone, and many of the utensils that my sister would use to make my brother's favorite dishes started to disappear. She didn't loan them out, no one borrowed them. I asked a friend of mine who's really into the supernatural about it. She said, "Does your sister believe in ghosts and such?" I said, "No, she's super no-nonsense and really doesn't believe," she said. "That's the problem. He's trying to get her attention. He wants her to talk to him. He misses her. He's trying to let her know that he's still around." A year after my brother died, my dad's lady friend's father died. And a year after that, she was still having a lot of problems coping with her dad's death so she went to a psychic to see if she could make contact with him. So the psychic tells her all the things she wants to hear. Yes, of course, your dad is in the room, etc. Anything that anyone could say to her. Then the psychic says, your dad's here, but there's a much younger man with him also. He's very tall and thin, with dark hair and glasses. Normally, Dad's lady friend would have thought of my brother, but she was having such a hard time coping with the loss of her dad that she just didn't make the connection to my brother at that exact moment. So she said, that doesn't sound like anyone I know. The psychic said, who's James? Dad's lady friend said, he's my companion. The psychic said, the younger man has a message for James. He said, please tell my dad that I'm okay. She realized it was my brother trying to get a message to my dad. The psychic knew nothing about my brother's death. Dad's lady friend was strictly there to talk about her father. 2 months after my brother died, I was kind of having a really bad day about his death. It was still very soon, and I was still grieving. I went out to Target in my neighborhood to run some errands Sunday morning, very early, right when they opened. And on this particular day, I had my hair up in a ponytail. I was going up the escalator to the second level, and suddenly I felt someone tug my ponytail, just in a friendly manner, like you'd tap someone on the shoulder. There was one girl I worked with who lived in my neighborhood, and I thought that early on a Sunday in this neighborhood, it could only be her. So I turned around expecting to see my coworker behind me with a big grin on her face, and I was alone. I was alone on the escalator. There was no one else on there with me, and the store was still mostly empty. 9 months after he died, I was in bed sleeping, and it had to be around 3 a.m. or so. Suddenly, I felt someone sit on the edge of my mattress. I actually felt the weight of this person sit down. I felt the edge of the mattress dip. I gasped because naturally I figured someone had broken into my bedroom and was going to attack me or something. I was lying on my stomach, and before I could roll over and see what it was, I felt this person lean up against me very gently, like they were trying to hug me without waking me up, and rest their cheek on my hair. I couldn't see anything, but at that point, I bolted upright, screamed, and snapped on the light. There was no one there. You guys, I swear on my life to this day, I could feel this person lightly hugging me. I could feel their cheek against my hair. I felt the mattress dip down when they sat. It's been 12 years since he died, and to this day, there's been no way to explain any of this. Sorry this was so long for my first post, but when I saw this topic, I couldn't help but register, so I could post.